Next item on our agenda is Trustee Richley resolution. Dr. Skelka.
At the request of President Bewer and on behalf of the other members of the Board of Education, a resolution is included in the action items tonight, addressing Trustee Richley's lack of communication, attendance, and preparation since mid-September. President Bewer.
The resolution reads, whereas Mr. Alan Richley is elected trustee of the East China School Board of Education, and whereas Trustee Richley made a motion on September 22nd, 2014 regular Board of Education meeting to form a committee of staff and community members to investigate the closure of an elementary school building, and upon passage of said motion, agreed to serve on that committee. And whereas Trustee Richley attended the first meeting of the committee but failed to attend the remaining 4 meetings. And whereas Trustee Richley provided no notification or reason for his absence either before or after any of the 4 meetings that he did not attend. And whereas Trustee Richley was contacted regarding picking up information materials necessary to prepare for the September 22nd, 2014 regular board meeting, indicated that he would do so, and then did not pick up the said materials. And whereas Trustee Richley failed to respond to more than one reminder of the offer to have the information materials delivered to him, and whereas said actions left Trustee Richley unprepared to participate in the discussion items on the agenda at that meeting. And whereas Trustee Richley did not attend the December 1st, 2014 regular Board of Education meeting, rescheduled from November 24th, 2014 due to a power outage, at which important information was presented and discussion had regarding the potential closing of an elementary school as part of the larger deficit reduction elimination effort program. Whereas Trustee Richley was aware of the rescheduled date and time as evidenced by information he posted on his personal webpage, social media page, but failed to provide notification for his absence either before or after the meeting. And whereas therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education publicly censures Trustee Richley for not being prepared or at other times present to meet his duties and responsibilities of a board member. Comments and questions? Mr. Richley.
I have a response.
Yes.
To the board members that have it in front of you, the first 3 paragraphs, this is my response to those. It is factually correct that I made a motion to form the school closure committee. I also did volunteer to serve on that committee. I attended the first meeting taking time off from work as it was at 4 p.m. Later, during the first meeting when discussing future dates of committee meetings, I explained that we should have our meetings later in the day, 6 or 7 p.m. as an example, as to accommodate citizens that work during the day and eat dinner at a decent time. No one agreed with me, and the compromise was a 4:15 start time from then on. I was unable to take any more time off from work. Like most people, I work to make money. I personally know 5 people that asked to serve on this committee, and they were turned away by administration. The above quote in this document says, Richley provided no notification or reason for his absence, either before or after any of the 4 meetings that he did not attend. I personally had a conversation on the night of the school board candidate event in October with Treasurer John Folsky as well as Trustee Amy Murphy, and told them both that I would not be attending any more committee meetings as my work schedule would not allow me. My question is, where in board policy, and the key word is board policy, does it state that I report to the school board president and or superintendent? The answer is nowhere. And my next response to the next 3 paragraphs is, the first time I actually discussed this issue, which was the not picking up the packet, was on December 10th, which is 5 days ago, in a meeting with the president of the board and community member that I brought as a witness to what was said. The superintendent claims to have gotten only an email reply back that I would pick up the information. I sent a reply accepting his invite to bring it to my house. He claims and is quoted saying, there were no numbers on the door and no mailbox. Here are the pictures that I took this morning, that was the morning after that instance, to show my house as well as my mailbox, and my neighbors, and as well as my parents who no longer live there, kind of laughed because they're pretty big. If you want to take a look.
Thank you.
They're very small on that paper, but as you can see, the numbers 628 stand out very clearly. Any of my neighbors are witness to the fact that both of those markers have been there for years. My parents put them there when they used to live there. I also came to the meeting early as I did not receive the information that was supposed to be provided to me as an elected member of the board. According to Dr. Skalka, on the evening of December 10th, even if you pick up the materials the night of, you can still be prepared. The next 3 paragraphs. In the past, we have never rescheduled a meeting unless it was an emergency in regard to when, at least since I've been on the board, if we canceled a meeting, usually we tabled the business until the next regular meeting. I was unable to attend the December 1st meeting that was rescheduled due to a prior commitment with my Army classes I have been taking at Selfridge. And yes, that's correct. The United States Army Reserves is once a month, but when you're going for promotion for different things, you have different classes to take, which I will get to in a moment. As for the December 8th meeting, I had the opportunity to get a jump start on WLC, which stands for Warrior Leadership Course, as well as other things I had to work on, so I jumped on it. I will not apologize for signing the dotted line to serve my country in the Army. In fact, I am proud to be a part of the 1% of our population that still does. The weekend of December 6th and 7th was also part of my regular drill schedule, where I had a medical examination and some other training, which I don't believe is the board's business, but I'm providing this to the public so that they know why I wasn't available. Also, as a part of my I already read that. As previously stated, I am not accountable to the superintendent or school board president for that matter. I'm accountable to you, the people of this district that I was elected to serve. When I met with the superintendent and president of the board on December 10th, they both told me that I was being censured because of a lack of respect and a lack of common courtesy. As you can see, that's not what it states on this document that you have in front of you. And rightfully so, because that just is not a reason to censure. Lastly, in the future, I hope to not miss any more meetings, but in the event that I do, I will communicate with someone in regards to what is going on. And I do regret not doing that, and that was a lack of common courtesy. But if Mr. Bewer or Dr. Skalka talked to me privately about this, I would have completely understood. And not sending a letter to the board, that I believe was kind of rude and disrespectful. And I think that any other board member that would have had a letter sent that was directed at them, but then sent to the entire board lecturing me on common courtesy, would also agree that that was disrespectful. In the future, I hope to utilize my time and new website to inform citizens on the positive things happening here in East China. And there are a lot of things positive. We're first in the county when it comes to scores, and I think that's something we need to push to convince people to move here and to build our enrollment. That's something that I believe should be the focus instead of taking time on this. That's what we should be, and that's what I will continue to do. Thank you for your time, and I just ask my fellow board members to consider these things when voting on this issue tonight. And I apologize, but I did forget. I have a picture here of my Facebook page, which you obviously watch very closely. And that's good. It keeps me honest. It says on here, on November 4th at 9:10 p.m., this is what I'm quoted saying, "I just want you all to know that I will be busy during the month of December and will miss one of the regular meetings due to a prior commitment. Thank you for understanding." And that's to the citizens of the East China School District that I serve in, if you'd like to take a look at this.
No, I'm happy.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a couple.
Yes, Mr. McNamee.
Advising Mr. Folsky and Ms. Murphy whether you're going to appear at a meeting or not. I don't think it's to essentially say, well, imply that somehow it's their fault that that information wasn't provided to the board or to the president or the superintendent. I don't think they're your messenger people. The second thing is, in January of 2013, you sat there and you turned to me and you said, well, are you going to show up at any meetings? You haven't been doing that. And I was kind of confused by that. It was a strange thought. And the Voice newspaper then did a little study on that. And it turned out that in the year 2012, I hadn't missed any meetings. But you certainly had implied that I had. And then in 2011, I had missed 3 meetings, and one of your people wrote a letter to the Voice News saying that I was missing meetings. Well, I had had surgery and 2 surgeries that summer, and I missed 3 meetings that year. All of which was explained to you, and none of which you ever bothered to mention to anybody else. But somehow that didn't matter to you when you said that why wasn't I at these meetings? You never said what meetings they were. So I find it a bit disingenuous then to say, well, I have good reasons not to be at the meetings, when it's good reasons for you, but evidently not for anyone else. And then in addition to that, you then went after other members of the board for not appearing at meetings. And you put out there that, how can you be a good board member if you're never going to be at the meetings? And I guess in a way that's, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Finally, these committee meetings that these people had, you had 21 people, and 20 people said, no, it's convenient for them to do it at such and such a time. One person didn't. The adult response would have been, well, I can't make those meetings, so why don't you get somebody else to do it? But that's not what happened. You took the juvenile way of not telling anybody, pretending that somebody follows your Facebook, which I could care less about your Facebook, and then somehow that's enough. No, that's not how professionals operate. Hopefully you'll learn that. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. I have nothing else.
I have a comment.
Mrs. Murphy.
I could probably talk about this for a long time and end up talking in circles over this. I don't think you're looking at the whole picture. It's not just the lack of communication that you have with the board. It's the respect that you do not show to any of us. You have thrown many of us under the bus numerous times. You have repeatedly, I know Mrs. Frank and myself are but two big targets on this for not doing what we ran on. And you know just as well as everybody else, we've tried. You have thrown out that I am spending taxpayer money by taking a class paid for by the board, that you pretty much you had people up in arms over this. The class was like $100. You expected me to pay the district back to learning how to be a board member, to taking a class to be, I could really go on and on about this. You just don't look at the big picture. There's a lot of disrespect that you throw to everybody on this board.
Just for clarification purposes, the course that Mrs. Murphy discusses, brought up, was the Michigan Association of School Boards. It's called School Board 101. It's the introductory course to which all new school board members are encouraged to attend, and we are making arrangements for our 2 new board members to attend, as it's very informative and helpful for a new board member to understand their role.
And just one last thing about you telling me and Mr. Folsky about you not telling us that you weren't going to be able to make the meetings. I had spoken to you about that. I honestly do not remember you telling me that, but that was during the point in time where you were mad at me and didn't speak to me for probably 6 months after each board meeting after that. So you might have said it to me, but I honestly do not remember.
being a member of a board, whether it's this board or any board, you will miss meetings at times as there are variables that are way beyond your control. Medical issues, employment, commitments, family obligations or illnesses, vacations with your family. That will happen to anyone that serves on a board. It's just a given. But you need to communicate to your fellow board members that you won't be in attendance of the board meeting. The issue with Mr. Richley, I felt, was a pattern of behavior for the lack of notice of communication. So that we know, as a school closing committee, we could have appointed someone else in that position, and Mrs. Frank did gracefully take the last position, or last meeting, and come and sat with us and gave some great input. And that's what we want, is the input. But no prior notice, post or prior to the meeting, is not acceptable.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Where in board policy does it state that I must do that?
It's just
I think it's just
respect.
common courtesy.
It's courtesy.
Well, and I agree, but if
We're
I'm going
supposed to be a board, we're supposed to work together, not one against six.
Well, I agree, but
You know, even if just like I told you before, if you don't want that communication with Dr. Skulker or Mr. B, you could have texted or called any one of us.
but I spoke with both you and John Folsky on the night of the candidate event.
Well, maybe I dropped the ball, maybe I
no-
should have passed the word on,
Well, I
but
mean,
I'm not
that's-
on the committee.
Right,
Yeah,
and I
I-
didn't expect you to relay the message, but I didn't know that I reported to the superintendent.
Well,
don't.
Alan, the way I look at it, all board members has to, first of all, get along or try to get along. And second of all, I think you do have to report to superintendent or the board president to inform them. You don't, go along with them, but I think there's a very lack of communication. I know Dr. Skelka, and he done it to me, going, and with Kelly, going all the way to make sure I have the board packet and stuff, and time again. And then they'll call, hey, did you receive this? Inform. And they try to touch base with you. I think it's just, I know we're all busy, but I think it's just common courtesy to get back. With that being said, and both sides, I think, learn from this, I like to make a motion that they drop this issue altogether. Because I think we all learn from it. But it's up to you folks. I made a motion that we drop the issue altogether.
Any support? Hearing none, motion failed. I would defer to a comment that we heard tonight from Dr. Shaw in adopting and looking at a code of ethics. Wonderful suggestion.
It is certainly something that, and I will speak with Dr. Shaw about her reference to the state of Maine, and we can have that at our transition board meeting, because that is, again, one of the purposes of the transition board meeting is to talk about our communication and how we interact with one another so as to be the highest functioning board as possible. This censure speaks to being present, to being prepared, and to participating. Participating means communicating. And though you do not report to me, Trustee Richley, when people communicate, they communicate primarily to the superintendent, they primarily communicate to the board president. And after repeated questions over the last couple of months as to where is Trustee Richley, why isn't he attending, and my inability to answer them after you mention a letter, that letter was only after several phone calls that were not answered or returned, because we just wanted to answer that question. If given a reason, we could have answered that question. We could have understood what was happening here.
Okay.
There's going to be discussion after a motion is made, correct?
There was no second, therefore there's no
Well,
discussion.
I mean after the next
Yes.
motion.
Yes.
Or is this is still in discussion, so I would like to ask those of you out in the audience that have an agenda to please turn it over where our public participation policy is on the back. And Mr. Bewer, you are the presiding officer of this Board of Education, and it is your duty and responsibility to enforce this policy for public participation. For those of you in the audience, go to the sentence in the policy that begins with, and I quote, "The presiding officer shall be guided by the following rules," end quote. Under section F, it states, and I quote, "All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually," end quote. I guess that rule only applies to any other board member besides me. On more than one occasion, the teachers union president has come up here and personally attacked me. Mr. Bewer, you have neglected your responsibility under this policy as presiding officer, or just don't know the policy. Does that make you eligible for censure? Personally, I don't agree with this policy, as I believe it violates the First Amendment. And I'll be the first to defend Mr. Lunguski's right to his opinion and any other person to share their opinion from that microphone. But I'm sure if his comments would have been directed towards any other board member, they would have went nuts. I recall someone coming up here and saying something at the podium directed at Mr. McNamee, and the rest of the board saying boozing buddies, and he was stopped. And so by Mr. Bewer's own standards, he would be eligible for censure for neglecting his responsibility as the presiding officer, as well as his absence without explanation from meetings in prior years, as well as other board members. Every board member has missed at least 2 meetings. And
That's not true.
I'm sorry, I haven't
I've
missed
missed
any.
one.
you haven't missed any? Well, okay, I will show
But
you.
I-
This is
but
not,
but
well,
Could I ask a question?
Hold on just one moment. You said you didn't miss one.
I haven't
So
missed
let's
any.
Well, let's get something else straight. Just while you're looking it up, what you're talking about is Dwight Hughes getting up there and talking about me being one of a boozing buddy group and I don't drink. So I did take exception to that, except that this wasn't Dwight Hughes' statement. He was reading something that you wrote for him because you published it on your website. So, I mean, that is what it's all about. And so it's when you're talking about what other people are doing, did you ever look in the mirror?
So in other words, this is revenge. That's what
let
it
me,
is.
let
No,
me,
This has nothing to do with
No,
This
revenge.
is-
I haven't
let
said a
me-
word about it until you start bringing up this nonsense.
But I
Let-
do.
about
let
you
me
being
remind one
attacked.
another again that what we're talking about here is not any single isolated absence, but a pattern of behavior that has developed over the last 2+ months.
But can I ask just a
Jill-
real quick question about what you're saying about President Bewer not stopping?
Sure.
What's the difference between Mr. Longuski coming up to the microphone and talking about you, or you get on social media bashing your fellow board members? Where's the difference?
So again, it's revenge. It's
It's
not about.
not
It's not about
revenge.
this issue.
But
It's
no,
not,
I'm
that's
just,
not
I'm
what this
just,
issue is
it's
about.
a double standard
It's-
that you're throwing out there.
No,
What's
it's a
the
double
difference on
standard
it?
that you have all missed meetings, and I'm being targeted for something that doesn't even violate policy. Yet you can all violate policy, and nothing is done.
Let me
But
once again state-
July 17th, 2013. Members absent. Board members absent. Jeannie Frank.
That wasn't a meeting, Alan, that was a workshop. It wasn't a board meeting. It wasn't.
Those
It-
were committee meetings, not regular meetings. So
Well, let me again
You
state
know,
that
really.
again, double standard. That's all I have to say.
within, next on this agenda is more information regarding the school closure topic. And that is a very important topic that we have been debating now for quite some time. It's unfortunate in many ways that it took this action to get folks engaged in school, in the discussion of school closure, as opposed to any other issue. I hope that you will remain engaged and that we'll be able to make progress on the issues facing the district.
We will move on to item F, school closure update discussion. Mr. Skelton.
There's an action item after the discussion items.
It's just a quick update from where we left off last Monday, making sure that we as both administration and a committee, we met not as a full committee, but I met with Mr. Luther, and then we shared the information with the committee later, so that we were again following through on what was discussed last week and a plan for moving forward. So last week at our December 8th meeting, the issue of a group of fifth graders that go to Pine River and then are also then afterwards go to our residential resident enrollees of Marine City Middle School and High School. The question is, what happens if we were to close Gearing and the fifth graders from Pine were to move to St. Clair? And so we've examined that, and I'll give you a little bit of update here this evening. The second issue was the request of the board that the school closure committee continue to meet, but as a district restructuring committee for the purpose of investigating not just elementary, but all schools and all grade level configurations, in addition to not just the 15-16 school year, but beyond. So with respect to the fifth grade, a little bit of information. Currently, there are 17 fourth graders at Pine River who would be impacted by the move of fifth grade to St. Clair Middle School. Of these 17, five have siblings currently attending St. Clair Middle or St. Clair High School. So they have older siblings who have already gone through this and chosen to attend St. Clair rather than Marine City Middle. One family has one additional student has expressed their desire to attend St. Clair Middle. That leaves 11, which is consistent with the number that over the last couple of years that have attended Marine City Middle from Pine River. In one scenario, the Bell River Elementary remains a K-5 and the Marine City Middle School remains a 6-8. Bell River is projected to have 75 fourth graders and 70 fifth graders. These student numbers project to 5 teaching sections, which would include 1 multi-age classroom, so 2 fourths, 2 fifths, and a 4-5 split. And you can see the enrollment numbers there. Adding those 11 fifth graders to Bell River eliminates the multi-age classroom and adds a teaching section, so that you would have sections of 25 at the fourth grade and 27 in the fifth grade. That's somewhat positive in that it decreases class size. On the other hand, it does add a teaching section, but we have been consistent in saying that the savings due to decreased enrollment over the next year would be 3 to 4 teachers. This would just ensure, or would make it the 3 that we have been talking about. So it's not inconsistent with anything we've discussed. In another scenario, Bell River would become a K-4, and we would move those fifth graders not to Bell as an intermediate year before attending Marine City Middle, but going directly to Marine City Middle. In this particular case, it's the exact same scenario because they're going into fifth grade, and the fifth grades would have then, you would have obviously no option for a split because you'd have the fourth graders down at Bell and the fifth graders at Marine City Middle, but the class sizes, the class sections work out the exact same way. Issues to consider, and the committee will be discussing these issues as well as any other that come to light, is if we move fifth graders from Bell to Marine City Middle, what, if anything, is the additional classroom space that is created at Bell going to be used for? If we remove the fifth grade out of Bell, that's 2 to 3 additional open classrooms. Would there be any sixth grade transition issues when fifth graders from Palms go to Marine City Middle for sixth grade with those students who have already attended Marine City Middle for a year? We don't know, but it's worth talking about. Okay, and we probably wouldn't know until it actually happened anyway. We'd hypothesize, we'd guess, we wouldn't know until it actually happened. Okay, the district restructuring committee. The committee will transition again from an elementary school closure committee to a district restructuring committee. Those members from the original group willing to continue to serve will stay on, and of that group, all but one, and that one person has received full-time employment, and as a result, has notified us that they would be unable to continue. We would continue, we would look to bring on some additional committee members based on balanced representation and having specific experience related to the committee's purpose of district restructuring. For example, we would like to add a third board member, as we can meet with 3 before we enter in an Open Meetings Act situation. We have a community member who has volunteered, who has both superintendent and board experience, which would be very helpful for our group. A district parent who also works as an administrator in another district, who is undergoing some similar building closure issues and has volunteered their time to accept us. So that's the kind of committee member we're looking to add, is somebody who brings experience and some expertise to the table as we move forward. Okay. This calendar of meetings is very similar to where we started back in September with the group. We threw out a first meeting that everybody showed, and the remaining 5, we spent time right at the beginning discussing whether or not those would work. We would do the same thing again. We already know that the February 17th meeting is problematic because it actually falls on a day without a midwinter break. But I have it on there only because it falls in the regular pattern of the rest of the meetings, knowing that we would want to discuss that. District Restructuring Committee would tackle things like the restructuring idea that was presented on September 8th. In St. Clair, Eddy becoming a K3, St. Clair Middle a 4-7, St. Clair High an 8-12, Pine an Early Childhood Center. Marine City, Bell River becomes a K4, Marine City Middle a 5-7, Marine City High 8-12, and Palms as a magnet. This is the kind of restructuring idea that the committee has now been asked to do, and will consider this scenario as a jumping off point, in addition to several other scenarios. In other words, this is brainstorming. These are ideas that just because it's on a slide at a board meeting does not mean it's going to happen. Okay? So we have to be very clear about that, and I want to say that very clearly. But it is the brainstorming that is necessary to be done to think about what are all of our possibilities and explore them as to their feasibility and whether they actually produce savings. Because again, the ultimate goal is to reduce the deficit and to continue to provide the excellent education that we heard about at Palms today, and that happens throughout our entire district. Timeline. The proposed committee schedule is established so that their last meeting, at their last meeting, they'll have the results from kindergarten roundup. Secretary Frank asked a great question a week ago, and that was, even though our kindergarten numbers were lower this year, was the percentage as a result of kindergarten roundup to final kindergarten numbers similar in years past? And indeed they were. So even though kindergarten enrollment had declined, it's still, kindergarten roundup provides us really good data that says that our eventual kindergarten class is about 72%, between 70 and 75% come to kindergarten roundup. So as we've talked here about whether or not this current kindergarten class is a blip or a trend, because it was significantly lower than the last 8 to 9 years, we would have that information and one more piece of that puzzle in providing an answer, or a proposal, or a recommendation, or however you'd like to act on that. The proposed committee schedule also allows for the board to make a decision at their March 23rd meeting regarding any school closure, configuration, or maintaining the status quo for a period of time. Making a decision prior to spring break provides us sufficient time to implement that decision. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple questions. When you're doing this study, will you also be looking at possibly Bell River being a K3 and Marine City Middle being a 4-7? I did have the opportunity to walk the halls with Mrs. Woolman last week, and it appears as though there is sufficient space in order to accommodate that kind of a structure. So that's just a question.
I think this is, as we talked about, an example of brainstorming, and I've had a great conversation this week with a retired teacher and current community member who gave me a whole different restructuring concept, right? So we'll bring that to the committee.
Okay.
Everything is on the table for us so that we can get to the best choice.
The second question is, are you taking into consideration too that it's not just going to be 4th and 5th graders from Pine in that pocket of Marine City? It's also going to be K through 3. It's going to be, it would be all of those, because I think we're seriously considering redrawing those boundary lines. So it's not just going to be 4th and 5th grade. It would be K through 5 that would be affected. So I think that is going to play into your teaching sections.
It will absolutely, as we have said throughout the fall, is that as we draw boundaries, new boundaries, that creates additional teaching sections, just because of students don't live systematically throughout the district or throughout grade levels.
Right.
So chances are, if we were to move students K-3 in addition to 4th grade, we'd be adding additional teaching sections beyond just the one.
Right,
And
or
we-
the opportunity to look at multi-age classrooms again.
Correct.
Thank
So
you.
just explain the pocket, what that means.
Well, if you look at the map, there's kind of like, I guess, using Recor Road. The Point Drive students on Recor Road, they go to Marine City, and they Point Drive dead ends at Recor Road, correct? So those are Marine City Middle, Marine City High students, but some of those students are picked up when Dr. Green changed the boundary lines before. They picked up those students as well as students south of, as far as Meisner. So you've got your Shady Lane, your Clover Lawn, which are even further south than the Point Drive students. That there's just this little pocket that I think it makes more sense, you know, for transportation purposes, for equity within the district, to look at making those students more of a Bell River, Marine City Middle, Marine City High, just kind of a natural.
Well, that's my point essentially, is we are talking about students who, when they do right now get out of 5th grade, the students in this pocket now, instead of being up in the north side, then are transitioning down
They are.
to Marine City. That's where they go, middle school.
Right.
In other words, we have 2 sets of boundaries.
We do, and that causes a lot of problems for those
Sure.
5th graders that are separated from the students that they've gone to school with, from kindergarten on. So I think in the best interest of the students, they should be moved back down to the Pine River
Where they will
Elementary.
transition right naturally to where they
With
are.
the students that they've gone to school with.
In addition to that, there's also the concept that when you have 3 or 4 kids, they're not necessarily, hopefully, all the same age. So therefore, it doesn't bother me, but I would imagine mothers might be a little upset. But the concept there being, if you have a couple kids at the middle school or the high school, you're heading that way. And if you have kids that are still in the elementary level, you're heading that way. And
It
so
just makes
just in terms of transportation issues. So there's certainly a ton of merit to that. At
Correct.
least, so I think that's something that obviously is very strong. Now, I know you can't do that tonight, but I just want to make sure everybody understands the pocket is not, it's just
It just makes
recreating a
sense.
natural transition as opposed to
Exactly.
an artificial one that exists now.
Correct.
I got a couple real quick questions.
Sure.
Since I'm on my way out the door. Pine, last time we talked, was going to be a special ed. Is that still, you showed early childhood, is that still a possibility? Is that where special ed, in your update report, nothing mentioned about special ed, and I was just curious where you're.
Well, what I gave you as an update was just the one suggestion for restructuring.
Right.
Certainly, if we pursue the issue of closing gearing, then obviously we have to move early childhood, and yes, it would still be consistent to move early childhood to Pine.
But about special ed, I'm kind of,
The-
is it too early to, that's something the committee could look into.
Well,
then.
again, special ed is special education is not a monolith. It's not one thing. You have the cognitively impaired program that is at Gearing that would go to Pine, all right? But the learning disabled, the students who are designated as LD or resource, they would
Right.
go to Eddy because they don't require the special program. They require services
Oh,
inside
okay.
the classrooms.
All right, so it's not, okay. And for Mr. Luther or whatever, all this moves, my concern is it educational sound,
Mhm.
the safety of the kids, and is there going to be a cost savings?
That's
My, I know you're working on it, but that's just my two cents worth before I exit the door.
absolutely.
That's it.
2 questions.
Sure.
Adding members to the committee,
Mhm.
including board members.
Mhm.
When is our first new committee meeting?
It is January 6th. It is the Tuesday that we return.
Would you please contact our 2 new board members to see if they're interested?
I can have one on. I can contact them to see their interest, but we can't take them both.
Well, I would say if both of them had interest,
Yeah.
I would release my seat
Okay,
if they both wanted to be on that
okay.
board. Okay.
Very good.
All right.
Very good.
And then adding new public members.
Again, we have been doing it in a manner in which we're reaching out to folks who have experience and expertise that will contribute to the conversation and help move us toward a solution as quickly as possible.
And approximately how many new members you think this is going to?
We're looking at a half dozen.
Okay.
You know, because of the structure in which we have done our meetings with large group and small group, adding additional members is easy, and the additional voices and experience and expertise will be welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
If you change the meeting time, I'll be able to attend, but I just throwing that out there.
Okay?
Okay. All right. End of our discussion items. Our board action items. Item A, recommended action per Board of Education request. The board approve the resolution addressing Trustee Richley's recent conduct as it applies to his participation and preparation as a member of the East China School Board of Education. Motion needed.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kennegbauer. Support.
Support.
Support by Mrs. Murphy. Comments and questions?
I just have one more moment of discussion.
Yes.
And I know it doesn't matter, but I just looked up the definition of censure, and I wanted to read it. It's a verb. As a verb, censure, express severe disapproval of, and then in parentheses, someone or something, typically in a formal statement, which we have here, or as a noun, the expression of formal disapproval. Well, I think, quite frankly, I've been disapproved by the board the moment that I got elected, that the people elected me. But Dr. Skalka and Mr. Bewer, this is a bully tactic in response to my posting of board updates and your contract. I will not back down, and I will not quit putting the truth out there for the public to see. If anything, this has emboldened me that there is something there to hide. What are you going to attempt to censure me for next? Having a big nose, big ears, short hair? Guilty as charged. Whatever happened to being innocent before proven guilty? You listened to this and read this and took it, and you didn't listen to my side of the story. Again, if this was such a big deal as you claim, and you didn't know where I was or didn't, why didn't anyone call me besides Dr. Skalka? Nobody on the board. So, and why wasn't there a certified letter sent if it was such a big deal? The bottom line is I have a target on my back, and as they say in the Army, if someone's shooting at you, you shoot back. I will respond to unfounded, politically charged attacks, and I want to thank the many people that have contacted me, called me, emailed me, and posted things on Facebook and supported me. I want to thank you. All in all, I think that my record speaks for itself, and I urge you to vote no based on the fact that this resolution should not have even been brought to this board table in the first place. We have much more important business to attend to and things to get done. From comments this evening, there is no doubt that this is an unfounded, politically charged attack, and I will not back down, like I said, and will never quit. I serve the people and will continue to do so in a professional, honest, and straightforward manner. Thank you.
Comments or questions?
Just a point of clarification. My compensation, along with every superintendent's in this state, is published on every district website by law under the transparency button.
All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
I would like to abstain, Mr. Buer, since it's an issue pertaining to me.
Thank you. 6-0-1, abstention. Motion carried. Next item on the agenda, recommended action. Per administrative recommendation, the board approved the resolution as provided by district council related to 1, the issuance of bonds consistent with the passage of the November 4th, 2014 ballot proposal, and 2, refunding of all or part of prior bonds so as to secure a lower interest rate on said prior bonds. Comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Need a motion.
Wait,
Oh,
we
I'm
didn't have
sorry.
a motion first.
Jumping ahead.
We're ready to go.
Might
I
go
so
censored. Watch out.
Motion needed.
I so move.
Mr. Folsky. Support. Mrs. Murphy. Comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Item 10 is items for January 26, 2015 agenda. Annual organizational meeting activities. Approval of the 2014-15 budget revision. Approve the bus purchase resolution. Approve revised high school world language graduation requirements, as we were all given information on tonight. And with that, we stand adjourned.